Welcome everyone that's here. Clark's going to get us started very, very soon. But while we're waiting for a few more participants to turn up, perhaps I could just get you in the chat function. Let us know whereabouts are you from, and what's one of the things that really interests you about this program and this webinar that Clark's putting on.
Cool. I'm busy plugging things in, hoping they work. Hoping they continue to work. I'm a bit concerned that my laptop, which is plugged in and working, the battery's actually going down, which bothers me. Okay, now we should be fine. If not, it's all over to you, Carl.
Right. So is the chat on for all now or just panelists?
When you are sending stuff, when you go to chat.
Phoenix, Arizona, Jim says. Engagement is important. So looking for any edge in this regard. I'm sure that Clark will be able to pick up on that. Hello from California, says Tao.
Hello, Tao. That's good. Yeah, so just so you know, Carl, I realized that when you sent out a hello to everyone, it went to the panelists, which is you and me, which is very nice of you.
So we say hello to each other.
Yeah, that's sweet.
That's great. And from Cologne. So we've got a bit of a global audience today. That's pretty exciting.
That's neat. So we will start in just a few minutes. We'll give everyone a bit of a chance to sort of wiggle into the world. Hey, Montreal. Hello, Anna. Oh, I like how you type back.
From Wellington.
Hello, Agil.
Experiencing the challenge of a customer not interested in agile delivery at the moment. At the moment. Love that. At the moment.
Hello, Viju. I just saw you popped a hello into the Q&A there.
In the Q&A.
So everyone who's watching, we've got actually a good number coming, probably about maybe over half of the people that signed up are in at the moment. So we'll just give it another couple of minutes. Carl and I are both in New Zealand, except technically we're overseas from each other because Carl is in the North Island and I'm in the South Island. Hey, Tom Gilb. Hello from Norway, Tom. Tom's one of my influences. Way back in the old days when I was young and impressionable, Tom taught me about 2% of everything he knows. And I've been living off a lot of that ever since. So thank you, Tom. Hello.
Oh, there's an inquiry. Can you define customer?
Nope.
So these are all great questions. So one of the things I'm going to do for Clark as we go through this webinar and as he talks about some of the subject matter is I'm going to try and capture some of the questions for Clark, and then I'll try and feed them into the conversation. So if you have questions as we're going through, please throw them in the chat. And I will try and keep on top of all the questions. Depends on how many come through. I know that Clark's also going to, during his presentation, he's going to ask you to actually put stuff into the chat. So I'm going to help him to just kind of keep up with that and keep track of it. So that's my job here today. And I'm also really actually looking forward to learning some stuff myself. Because I know some of Clark's work and every time, yeah, I do, Clark. So I hope I'm going to learn something today. I'm sure I will. Every time I've met with you in the past, I've always learned something new.
Oh, don't set the expectations, please.
Get the bar high. Yeah.
Hello,
Oh, so we've got somebody from India as well.
Oh my God, 2 a.m. in the morning, you're mad. But it's nice to see you. Yeah, it's lovely to see you. You're not mad. I shouldn't say things like that. But it's lovely to see you at 2 a.m. in the morning. So we better make this worth your while. How about we start in about just a few moments, and we could actually start with that question from Viju. How do you define a customer? So,
oh, nice.
Can I turn this around on everyone? I'd like to make this interactive through the chat if we can, because this is one of those things that annoys me. It actually doesn't annoy me. In the Agile Manifesto, it says we prefer customer collaboration over contract negotiation. And yet that word customer is really quite confusing for a lot of us, because if I work for a bank and I'm working in a big agile project, say in a bank, the customer, there's customers outside the bank. So is it the bank's customers or the internal customer, say the head of marketing who's the sponsor, or is it the product management team, or is it the product owner? For me, actually, I won't give you the answer yet. Can you just, could you just, if you can, just type in the first name of someone you think of as your agile team's customer, and then I'll give you my answer. And really, it's a cheat answer because it's all of the above. So if you guys wouldn't mind just typing a little bit, then Alex, good. Person who's paying for the product or service, yeah. Yep. Any others coming through? The user. Okay, so there's a good distinction. Direct manager, yep. The paying one.
The paying one.
Nice. And the smiley face to go with it. Cool. Okay. Yeah, that's good. So we've got a bunch of different people there, and this is where it gets kind of confusing. I wish we had a word for internal customer that was only one word, not two. So with this, I'm talking about a team, and you got a team there, lovely bunch of people busy working away on stuff, and they get inputs and direction from the customer. I'm not talking about the Bank of New Zealand. I'm not talking about me as their customer. I'm talking about someone that works inside the organization and kind of steers and directs the team. That's had many different names over the years, but it's just the internal customer. And really this is about being, actually Jim's put there, a stakeholder who's directly or indirectly enjoys your product or service. So if we have someone who's internal, the customer is kind of speaking on behalf of the organization, trying to figure out what the organization's customers want. I just really wish we had a word for that. Many years ago, when Agile was kind of starting to sort of get traction, there was a wiki called the C2 wiki, I think it was. And on that, the founders of Agile, the early thinkers, who actually, Tom Gilb, who's on the call of just for the rest of you, was way ahead of these guys and influenced a lot of them. They made the distinction between goal owners and gold owners. So the gold owners were the ones that had the money and were paying for your team to do this stuff. And the goal owners were the people who could be the same, but they were figuring out what's the goal of this project, what's it trying to achieve for the organization. So I don't want to go any more from that, but it's the stakeholders, it's the people who typically direct and steer the team. Okay, now can I check, Carl, you guys can see map of the world in front of you?
Absolutely, yep. I can.
Okay, let me go back a page. Right, and let's just start this thing from scratch, and I'll get rid of the thing that's sitting over top of that. Okay, so this is, we're agile, but our customer isn't engaged. Let's fix that. So I'm not going to promise you utopia. I'm just going to promise you an easy way to make things better. And in fact, purely by coincidence. A bit of it comes from Tom Guild, who's sitting there listening away in Melbourne from many, many years ago. Right, so we're agile, but a customer isn't engaged. Let's fix that. So I'm going to tell you this in the form of a story, except it's not really a very well written story because it might become a little book someday. I think most of you who are on here will know that I write stories and books. This one here is fiction, entirely fiction, but it's based on truth. And then it's actually created a lot of truth from people who've read it. This one here is a lot of true stories, none of which are absolutely 100% true. Like I've obviously as a writer made them easy to understand, brief, quick, and so on. But a story is a good way to follow through. And I would like to imagine in this that this story, it starts with a hero. All good stories have a hero, and they have a problem. If they didn't have a problem, it would be a very boring story. And our problem is the thing that's on the screen there. We're agile, but our customer isn't engaged. So if you could try and pop yourself in the shoes of the hero here, but when you go back to work, there's another character that I'm going to bring up, which is the guide. So think Yoda is the guide, Luke Skywalker is the hero. The hero is actually a very weak, scared often person because they have to go and do this brave stuff, which is what makes them heroic. The guy kind of has a plan, has been around a bit, and maybe is a bit aged, can't go off and actually do the work, but gives them advice and direction and literally guides them to where they want to go. So just imagine that when I'm telling you the story, you, when you go back to work tomorrow, are going to be the hero in the story. In this story, when you get there, you're going to act like the guide. You're going to be the helpful one. Okay, so I love this map because, and this is really cool. See down here, New Zealand, this is where Carl and I both come from. Carl's up here in the North Island. I'm down here in the South Island. This is not quite to scale. I'm down here. For some reason, people don't bother putting New Zealand on the map. And actually, to be honest, that's because we are so cool that we don't want people coming here. Well, we do actually, but coronavirus has completely killed our tourist industry. But we're here. But thanks to the internet, we've got everyone on, from all over the world. So it's lovely to see you all. That's me. I'm the good-looking one on the left there. The Bottleneck Rules, that's my book. If you haven't got it already, I suspect most of you have, go to share, share.toc.guide, and just get a freebie copy. It's been in The Spectator magazine in the UK. It's been featured in The Guardian, which is delightful. It's been, it was, for a few days, it was the second best-selling leadership book on Amazon.com in 2019. And so it's quite a good book. It's really easy to read, and you can get a freebie copy there without any hassle. There's a whole lot of other books here. I just want to just point out this one. This is the book, Corkscrew Thinking. Carl, I, and a friend of ours, Graham Scott, are running a webinar in 2 weeks' time, a series of webinars, actually 3 of them. Carl will probably pop in the chat, I think soon, a little link to it. If you want to join up to that, just go along, same sort of thing, same time, same place, except it's in about 2 weeks' time. And that will show you just one really clever way of solving problems and coming up with innovative solutions just by thinking slightly differently. And it's the way that all great leaders think. Corkscrew Thinking was actually the name given to it by Winston Churchill. So I've got a book coming up, but that here is not about this. This is about our little story here, a story which hopefully you can turn into real life. So let's start our story with 2 parts of the story, the hero and the problem. Now, just to make sure you understand here, I'm not the hero in this. I'm the guide that's taking you through this and hopefully teaching you some interesting stuff. The problem is that the Agile team isn't fully engaged. And that's kind of the essence of it. Now, we can look at the little domino things here in 2 ways, but I hope you're all old enough that you've either played this or maybe you've seen this, videos of it. You're aware that there are some really sad people who are really also quite artistic and very, very tenacious. And they go along and they line up dominoes. And 1, 2, 3, 4, they might have thousands of them. And they create art with their dominoes. And then they click over the very first one here, this guy here. They tap that one over, and then that taps over, that taps over, that taps over, that taps over, and then knocks them all over. So if you think of that as a root cause here, and there's that. I'm going to ask you to put some answers in the chat here. If you think of this first domino being the root cause that our agile team, customer, isn't fully engaged. In other words, what I'm saying there is we'd love to get more time with them, but they're too busy. Or they don't see the value in this, but we need more time from them. So I'd like now you to think of the consequences that come from not having a customer who's fully engaged with the team. Just from the Agile team, can you start popping some stuff in the chat there? What's some of the negative things that happen? What's the bad things that happen because you haven't got a customer there? And I'd just love to just see them, just trickle through it. We'll just read them out as we go along.
So the question, Clark, is what are some of the bad things that happen because the customer isn't there?
Yep. The whole team becomes disengaged. Yep, that's cool. Tom, can you elaborate on that? Just brainstorm, burst out bad things that happen with your fingertips. Just pop them in here, and then don't tell anyone, Carl. But I'm going to take this stuff, and then if I do write a book about this, I'll just nick all of them. Okay.
Okay, I won't tell anybody. So the question is, what are some of the bad things that happen because the customer is there? And Tom said the whole team becomes disengaged. Yeah, what else happens? Nothing.
Nothing's happening.
Nothing happens, Clark. Nothing happens.
You
build the wrong things.
Lovely, Jonas. Bad requirements. Yep. Not delivering what the customer wants to use and needs. Losing trust of the customer as a result. I like that. Yep. The whole team that is disengaged.
Oh, this is great. This is great, team.
No support.
I love this. Keep it coming.
You build a poor product. Do you get delayed? Yep, delayed projects. So if you're working in a team and you want a decision made, what happens? If you haven't got access to the customer, what happens? So just if you guys could keep typing some stuff in here. So we've got blame game. Yeah. It's interesting here. These are all kind of problems. A lot of these are problems of the relationship. You end up building a product that's not as good. It creates a lot of dissatisfaction, creates a lot of rework. You miss key requirements because you haven't got that face-to-face time. And no support at critical decision points. Kevin, that's a really good point, because what happens when you don't get decisions made quickly? You either carry on with a half-hearted decision or you wait. And then if you're waiting, what do? You start new stuff and you increase your work in process. So you have a whole lot more stuff that starts that's not getting finished. In theory constraints land, we talk about multitasking being evil. And effectively, we end up diluting our effort just to keep everyone busy. Misspent investment. Okay, so we've got a good bunch of stuff there. That's really good. I've been asking this question a lot, mainly because I came from this from a slightly different angle, which is that, and it's what's mentioned here, is that I've noticed all of these things that you pointed out here, and I've kind of listed out them out here. But what happens is that because the customer isn't engaged, it actually creates a whole lot of rework. It creates a whole lot of busy work as people work on stuff that keeps them busy rather than working on the stuff that requires customer input. And these things conspire to make us look slow. And then a customer who's the one that's actually causing these problems the lack of engagement, because they're causing all of these problems, and then the relationship starts to fail. Agile gets blamed for being slow. The teams get blamed for being slow, and it's really, really frustrating and demotivating, because really just this one little glitch is making Agile look bad. And if you think about what Agile's done, it's usually working inside a team, getting the collaboration and all of this improvement work going on inside the team is working really, really well. But it's all being let down because of this front end feeding in where we don't have enough contact. And I think that's
Clark, I just have to say, like, when I look in the chat and I look at the chat and the list of problems there compared to the list you've got on your slide, they're almost, bang on, like they're almost identical to each other.
That's good.
that's quite impressive. yeah. I was just noticing that. And the other thing I noticed, you said a lot of that's relationship issues, but the other thing I've noticed, Clark, is that that it's also about doing the tasks. So there's almost like the relationship and the tasks. So that's really, really interesting.
It's interesting how if the engine was optimized effectively, which is what Agile's done a really good job of doing that, but the customer is not engaged or not feeding stuff in, it actually effectively sends this engine racing off in the vehicle racing off in the wrong direction. Right. And that makes everyone unhappy, but because everyone's busy, and this is the fundamental problem, everyone's busy here, it causes a heck of a lot of grief, stress, frustration, disappointment, lost profits, huge amount of lost profits because of this, but everyone's busy, so we don't notice it. Yeah, so that's really cool. Thank you for that. So you can imagine inside the team, moving on with our story now, we've got a hero, we've got a problem, we've got a chain of problems actually. We've identified the villain, Darth customer. There's the bad guy. They're sitting in there, and things may have started well when you do Agile, you start off really well, but then over time, because you haven't got this engagement, all of these just little things happen, and you move further and further apart, and suddenly you've got them and us, which has always been a problem in software development and in a lot of places, but we've got them and us. And that's why when you look at the Agile Manifesto, we talk about customer collaboration over customer negotiation. But when you're dealing with a bad guy, you're generally in negotiation mode. And so the idea of this is to move into collaboration mode. That's the solution. And I'm going to show you an easy way to, a surprisingly easy way to do that. But so we identify the victim, the villain, sorry, but then we meet a guide. So we meet someone who's going to guide us. I always wanted to do this. There we go. That looks better. Who points out who the real villain is. Says this customer isn't the villain. The villain, and in Yoda speak, is at the front of your system. It is the system's bottleneck. And you go, what's that mean? And in plain language, it's that your customer is actually the bottleneck. Now, often when we think of customer, because we've got this word that means two things, if I'm the Bank of New Zealand, say, just to narrow it down, the customer is outside of our immediate system. Me as a person who has a checking account is outside the system. But inside software development, in the IT department, at a bank, the internal customer is inside the system. But we treat them as if they're outside, as if they're a customer that's placing orders or buying products or not. They're not. They're actually part of our process. So if I were to draw this, there's the problem here. Here's the Agile team. And there's the customer. And now the thing goes like this, and then we go to users at the end of it. The first problem here is that this is actually our first step towards having a full view of the system. But then we also have to bring in our users, and then we have external customers who are the real customers. So the customer is inside the system, and they're the bottleneck. So I'm going to tell you about bottlenecks. I suspect most of you on the call know about bottlenecks, but let me just elaborate, and I'll tell you a bit about them. And I've got a useful analogy that I think will make it even clearer. So we're saying that the customer who's at the front of the system is the bottleneck, but you're not managing them like they're a bottleneck. You're inside the system. You're managing them as if they're a customer who's outside the system, outside of the team. And then you go, what does that mean? So let me explain a little bit about bottlenecks. So there's a bottleneck at the beginning of it, and there's a real life bottleneck. Okay, bottle of wine. Just to make sure we're all clear, that there is the narrowest part of the bottle, right? That's what a bottleneck is. So in terms of flow, if I pick this up and turn it on its side, the stuff flowed out here, the rate of liquid flowing out will be determined by the bottleneck. Okay, if you didn't have, you had a big wide neck on it, more would come out. If you had a narrow neck, like for this chili pepper, which is absolutely fantastic, and only Carl and I have access to it because it's made here in New Zealand, this one has actually a very, very narrow neck hidden inside this. And that's deliberate. You actually deliberately have a very narrow bottleneck on this so that you can actually manage and control the flow out. Because if you didn't, if this here, this red stuff was in there with this size bottleneck, you'd ruin every meal just because, and you waste your expensive hot sauce because it would pour out too quickly. So bottlenecks actually serve a purpose when they're managed. Right, now I'm just going to tell you a little story here, and I'll go through it quite quickly because I just want you to have a shared understanding here. And so here we go. So this is from the Bottleneck Rules book. It's a real story, but just simplified. And I've missed out most of the actual story bit here just to get to the joke bit of it, which gets the point of bottlenecks across. So I was working with a team. They had a board that looked just like this, had a whole lot of stuff. And you could just tell that this here step was the bottleneck because it was going slower. If I were to draw the capacity, it kind of looked like that. And you could tell it was a bottleneck because there's a big buildup of stuff sitting in front of it. And when I was working with this team, I told them this joke. I've told people this joke thousands of times. It was supposed to come from Cheers, a TV series, but it didn't actually. It was just an email that went around in the early 2000s. But just imagine you've got Cliff Clavin, who's the odd postal worker in Cheers, and he comes and he tells everyone a joke. He says, well, you see, Norm, it's like this. A herd of buffalo can only move as quickly as the slowest buffalo. That one there. See how slow they move? Terribly slow. That took me 2 or 3 weeks to get that animation right, by the way. And the slowest buffalo stays at the back there, and all of these ones here, they run on ahead, but at the speed set by this guy. So the slowest buffalo is like a pace setter, but at the back. And if they didn't do that, the herd would split apart. So they would look like this. They'll be split apart. And then when they're split apart, they would be prone to be attacked by wolves. Watch this guy here. Bing! Imagine a big grrr, and a wolf's just eating him and his friend there. So when they're split apart, they're actually weaker as a herd. So evolution favored the herds that stuck together and ran tightly with the slowest one at the back. And when these tightly packed herds are hunted, the wolves, who would they kill? They wouldn't come up and try and take that guy out because they get squished. Or that guy, or that one, or that one, or that one. They picked the slowest one here, which was unfortunate for Granny, who was running at the back. But Granny got taken out by a wolf, and that made the rest of the herd faster and stronger. They could suddenly run faster because they were no longer limited by the slowest buffalo. The slowest buffalo, by the way, is the bottleneck. And then they race ahead like that. Right, so here's the joke bit. And in much the same way, it carries on Cliff, the human brain can only operate as fast as the slowest brain cells. And now, as we know, excessive intake of alcohol kills brain cells. Right, with me, you can see where this is going. But naturally, obviously, it attacks the slowest and weakest brain cells first. And in this way, regular consumption of beer eliminates the weaker brain cells, making the brain a faster and more efficient machine. And that norm is why you always feel smarter after a few beers. Ha, 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 ha. Now, if we were in grid mode here, and we could see all your faces, I'm sure you'd be rolling on the floor. We wouldn't see your face, but you'd be rolling on the floor laughing. It's actually not the world's worst joke, not the world's best joke, but it kind of gets across this point. And when I tell people this joke, they get the idea of the bottleneck, the slowest buffalo, really, really quickly. And then someone always turns and points to the testers, because you're almost always in a software development team that's doing agile and that doesn't know about this stuff. The bottleneck is almost always the testers. And he goes, hey, you guys are the slowest buffalo. Then I might ask, or someone else might ask, okay, well, so if we want to go faster, we have to speed them up. And then someone else will say, we could speed them up, or we could feed them to the wolves. And everyone else has a little bit of a laugh, ha, ha, ha. And then they get into problem solving mode. And what this little joke does is it just gives people a concept, an idea. It is a little light bulb. Our team's speed, our throughput, our productivity is determined by the slowest buffalo. Who is that? Let's see if we can speed it up. Okay.
But I don't think, Clark, that you're recommending that testers should drink beer at work, right?
Well, it might make them more intelligent. I hope there's no testers on here, because otherwise.
There's 22 people here at the moment. It's quite possible.
Well, it's quite possible. Yeah. No, don't drink at work. It's funny. I've been telling you that particular story, that little joke, for probably 15, 16, 17 years, something like that now. And you're only the second person that's actually thought of that as an approach for making the
solution. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So it's my
it might be your problem.
It's my issue.
Yeah.
That's how I speed up. Yeah.
So, we've got some.
Oh, guide the way, Clark.
Yes. Driveway. Sorry, right. I'm just having a look at Anna. I believe that it was Dan Brown who recommended to start the story with a villain because he or she will define the narrative. Yes. Yeah. In the story, it's really helpful to have a villain. And notice a lot of politicians. Some of them will choose that angle, and they will have a villain, and it will create a tribe around people hating the villain. And that's kind of the opposite of what we want. So what I'm trying to do here is move our minds from being the person, the customer is the villain, to the situation is the villain. And the situation is that we have a bottleneck. And it's the front of our process. And if we don't manage it, then we will carry on as we are, but we'll get nowhere. Well, no, we'll get in the wrong place really quickly. Okay, so now you go back to the to Yoda, the hero, and the hero says, yes, so we've actually identified the real villain now. It's this bottleneck thing, right? So here's a plan. And in these books, the guide literally guides you through, the story, what you should come back, because the hero is new to this and struggling. So the guide says, okay, look, here you go. Here's the 4-step plan to learn the Force, and so on. So we have a 4-step plan here, and this is coming from me, which is the first one is to learn the focus formula. That's a formula that's in the bottleneck rules. It teaches you how to find, which is what the F stands for, and then manage the bottleneck. The second is that if the customer is your bottleneck, then we use the focus formula to fix that. And that's what we're going to talk about next. And then once you've done that, you've kind of fixed up probably the almost this unspoken pain and frustration that a whole lot of people thought was unfixable. And then you started to build trust with your customer because you're starting to collaborate. And then the bottleneck will actually move. It's got to move because the customer will find ways of getting a bit more time with the team, and then the bottleneck will move. Just like when the slowest buffalo gets eaten and the whole herd speeds up, the same thing will happen here, except no one will get eaten. And then once you've got that step sorted out, then you can move to what I call a U-shaped team. I'll explain that at the end, but it's the optimal shape when you think about capacity. And then once you've got it, you have to constantly protect it, and then you've got to constantly improve it and make sure that you don't lose the U shape. And then this is where the magic comes in. Then you start curating, which is looking at the work that comes into your team and working with your customer to make sure that you milk the absolute most value out of it, turn the team into a cash cow. So we're just going to talk about the first two steps here. So here's the focus formula. It's just made of these words. Just see here, I spent a long weekend, very long weekend once, figuring out, I started with focus and I worked backwards and I come up with these words, and I think they fit pretty well. So very quickly, you look at the system and you go, okay, first step, find the bottleneck. Okay, so we found it. It's a customer. It's been hiding in front of us all this time. Hey, that's really cool. So we found the bottleneck. Now we need to optimize the customer, their time, see if we can make the most out of it or wherever the bottleneck is. Then we start to look, and I'll swap to a different page here. And then we start to look at the 3 C's in this, which are to do with the non-bottlenecks. And we ask, how can the non-bottlenecks, like in other words, everyone else, how can they coordinate, work better? How can they collaborate? How can they curate the work that's coming in through the teams from the customer? And how can they get more value out of the team just by coordinating, collaborating, and curating? And if I had to pick one of those words there, it's collaborating. It kind of sums up everything there. And then once you've done that, you might actually go, actually, we need to upgrade, which is when you, like, if I need to upgrade my PC, or I need to upgrade the memory in my PC. It often involves spending a bit of money. And then once you've done that, the bottleneck's going to move. So you start again, and you start again strategically, because you want to make sure that when the bottleneck moves, it moves to the right place. So having a look back here, right, we have identified our slowest and our fastest buffalo here, and we've drawn a circle around them. So this is the view that we normally have. Now this one here, if we just put, this is the agile team, just there, right? This one here, the fastest, is normally what we think is the slowest. This is normally our developers. We normally have far more developer capacity than we do in the other roles. This one here is normally testers. And actually, when I put the role names, I actually mean testing capacity, development capacity, not the roles, because you've got other ways you can do those things that don't necessarily involve the people. And now that there is a very narrow view. That it's not very narrow. That's our narrow view of when we look at our agile team. You see this little fella up here? That's the customer. They're sitting up there. And if I draw this back again, hopefully, our customer here is actually leading this team. They're not inside it. They're leading. I don't know what that actually says. That says leading. And they are steering the team. They're providing decisions and input and all sorts of stuff. So this lot here, they're actually the bottleneck. They're actually way back, way behind this team here. And this team has they formed a little herd there of buffalo that are running away from the customer. And the customer, because they don't have enough capacity and time, can't come in and point out, hey, look, you guys are running the wrong way and you're heading towards a cliff. We don't want you running off the cliff. So this is the problem that we're trying to solve. We are trying to figure out how we manage this one here. Okay, so effectively, I'll just sum that up. Slowest buffalo isn't actually even in the herd. It's the slowest buffalo is the bottleneck, and it's the customer. And that's the problem that most teams are trying to fix, in theory, except they're not. So you go back to the guide, and the guide says, well, the problem is that you're trying to optimize in the team. You know, if you're doing agile, this is wonderful stuff. You're in there, you're making it better and better and better. You're improving, you're having retrospectives every week, every 2 weeks. A lot of your effort, which is absolutely fabulous, goes into improving and getting faster and delivering more. And that's fantastic. The only trouble is, if you look at it this way, with the buffalo stuff, you're making these guys run faster in the wrong direction, and you should if you're doing the F in focus, finding the bottleneck, be focusing on how to speed this guy up. Okay. So this really is the fundamental problem. We keep getting better and better in here, but we keep running further and further away, faster and faster in the wrong direction. Right. So now, Carl, you're on mute.
Yeah, so I just realized that. This is really cool, Clark. One of the things I was just thinking about, so before we were talking about testers and offering them beer to speed them up, but what I think I just heard was actually what we need to be doing is offering our customers beer.
Yes, that wouldn't be the worst thing.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be the worst thing.
Yeah,
or even just
at least
lock them in for coffee.
Right. But the idea is actually to stop focusing on trying to increase the testers, if I'm getting what you're saying,
Yep.
but actually to help our customers to speed up, so that they can become more part of our team, perhaps, because we know more about us as a team.
Yeah. You know the idea of the sphere of control and the sphere of influence. Yeah. There's this. If I draw it here, this is the sphere of control. This is what you can control. Mm-hmm. And so if you're working in an agile team, you can control the stuff that happens inside your team. You can kind of only influence, and there's a customer there, you've only got influence over there. And this is a skill that we need to use. We need to go there inside our sphere of influence. So we can actually work with them, but we can't directly control them and fix them. Yesterday I went to my physio. He's been helping with a sore neck. And he said to me that with lockdown happening around the world, a lot of his physiotherapist friends have been unable to do work because even if they can have customers come in, the customers are thinking, no, this neck pain that I've got, it's not killing me. I'm aware of it, but I'll put up with it. And I think this situation is a lot like this. In most teams, even though logically this is the problem, building a bridge here, that we should be working on, what's happening is the teams go, this is a lot easier. This is what we're told to do. This is really brilliant. We're doing this. And we are trying to get this here, but we don't actually have the skills to do it. And in fact, what we've developed over the years is almost a combative relationship, them and us. And we're busy negotiating. We're busy, like it says in the Agile Manifesto, we're busy contract negotiation. We're working in a them and us kind of way rather than figuring out how to collaborate together. So this is effectively what we want to do. So I want to direct people to go, right, let's solve this bottleneck problem and focus our attention on that just for a little bit. And there's a surprisingly easy but not perfect way to do this. And all we just want to do is get a bit more time. Now, I want to refer to a young man called Tom Gilb, who's on the call from Norway. Now, and I'm going to bastardize your work, Tom, but with the utmost respect, I'm just going to simplify it for everyone. So if you haven't read Tom's books, Tom is one of my he's one of my major influences over the years, and has kind of taught me some really lovely things. Sorry, I've got a LinkedIn message coming there. Hang on, I'm just going to switch off my notice.
Just while you're doing that, Clark, so Tom actually made a comment earlier in the chat. He said, what if critical measurable stakeholder values are delivered every sprint? And what I got from that, Tom, was that you're actually, I think you might be talking about critical measurable customer values. That's my what I'm hearing from Clark, and from that comment, Tom, you did say,
yes.
Yep, he says, yes, that's exactly right. Okay, that's awesome. So now I'm learning from both of you, which is really cool. So thanks for that.
So that's cool. So part of I again, I don't want to bastardize your huge amount of work, Tom, by simplifying so much. A key part of it is figure out if you want to build trust with your customer, you want to get them involved. It all boils down to building up trust and this spiral of goodness over time. And that break it down and figure out a way of making things better for them that they notice, and and that we can count and we can measure, and people can go, hey, yeah, things are getting better, and do it frequently, weekly, give them stuff. So I want to take a slightly different angle on it, because that's the outcome of what I want. But the first step is, if we were to measure, and you should all do this, just here, say this is 0 to 10. I just want you just to absolutely think in here and just go roughly on a scale from 0 to 10, where 0 is, I haven't got a customer, to 10, it's like, wow, they're working inside the team. This is great. We all go out. We just. There's absolutely no issue. There's no way they'd be described as bottleneck. We want them, ultimate success scenario. That we want some good stuff from them, and they provide the good stuff. They're right there. They're quick. Everything's fantastic. They do a good job. Somewhere in between there. I just want you to just think roughly, where would you put them? Where would you put them? So that's 5. I would say that most teams between 2 and 6 would be roughly. Yep. So this is.
So Clarky, just a message here. This is from Jim. First word customer. Second word that was engagement, wasn't it?
Oh, are you mocking
customer
Jim?
engagement?
I'm mocking my writing. Customer engagement. I have no idea. It could be that or wagon nugget. Yeah, customer engagement.
Yeah. And look, just while we're there, so Tom also mentioned, hi guys, in this example, the customer isn't actually regulating the flow if the development team runs away. This doesn't make them a bottleneck, does it? Was the question. And Jim says, thanks very much for the second word. That's great.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Jim. Yeah, you're probably right, Tom. I've sort of struggled with this. I think they are the bottleneck, because I think they're part of the team. But we don't normally think of them as a bottleneck, because we normally think of it inside the delivery part. But when you go a bit wider and you say, who's sending us stuff here? So if you think of a bottle, actually think of the ketchup, a ketchup bottle, as imagine that you've increased the flow, which is really, really good. But you haven't got your customer isn't putting it in the right place, and you're dropping it. You're effectively pouring ketchup on your floor rather than on your plate. So it's a word thing. I'm sticking with bottleneck because I think it is if the resource that I could increase the capacity of. So who do I want more time, more capacity from?
Jim says customers might also be involved in UAT, software development lifecycle.
Yep. So it is looking at it's a resource. Which one needs more capacity? And by adding more capacity, we would actually make the thing go faster. It does get confusing though. So I take your point there. Can't remember who said it. Tom, other Tom. Okay, so,
yep,
so what we're going to do.
And Tom says, thanks, Clark. Makes sense.
Oh,
makes really good sense.
Thank goodness for that. Okay.
I added the really good.
Oh, I like you. Yeah. So just imagine you do this, and what we're trying to do is we go 2 to 6. Now, the thing I learned from Tom, and I think this is the fundamental, not the thing, one of the most important things I learned from Tom, I think this is one of the most fundamental things, is that we can improve slowly, bit by bit. And so instead of trying to go straight from a 2 to a 10, which is often what we try to do, how about if we said, currently, you're a 3. How about this week, we try to go from a 3 to a 4. And then we go from a 4 to a 5 over maybe the next month. And then, we can't measure these exactly, but, we'll kind of know what a 6 will look like. And let's say that could well be actually good enough because they're no longer the bottleneck. Or we've just had so much improvement. The 6 is just good enough, is another way of putting it. So remember, we don't need a 10, probably. And if we're at a 3 at the moment, getting from 3 to 6 is fantastic. But just get there every week. Just a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. And if you do that, your customer, provided you make sure they notice, they will notice and they'll find that they get value from it and they'll do more and more and more. So I'm going to show you a way of thinking about this. This is how you make it easy, all right? Now, you imagine a nice 2x2 matrix here. You can draw this out. And I'm going to draw down here competence. This is really, really obvious once you see it, but for me, it was amazing when I drew it out for the first time. So imagine you've got 2x2, and what you're saying is, here now, I want to know how competent my customer is. So this is customer competence and customer capacity. So what can they do versus how much time have they got to do it? So now, obviously, we want to have people who have plenty of time up here and plenty of competence. Wouldn't that be brilliant? But quite often, we have people over here. They're actually really good at their job. Let's say they're the head of marketing, and they're supposed to be helping this agile team, and they've got a day job. Now, the trouble with having a day job and trying to help this team is that the day job is usually full of urgent stuff, and the agile team are less urgent and going to cause them less pain if they don't help them. So what we do is we find ways here of increasing their capacity. This is the bottleneck stuff, right? And we're going to do that with collaboration and curation. And it's the same kind of stuff that we do down here when we try and get these guys and move them from here. These ones here, where they may not have enough competence to do it, but perhaps they've got plenty of time. So with these ones here, let's go here, and let's just go, we're up here now, here's our customer. They're really short on time. So I'm just gonna, this becomes the problem that you try to solve. So solve for X is figure out a way to make it easier for them to get just a little bit more time from you. So we move up from a 3 to a 3.5. So one example I love, which actually took this situation from a 3 to probably a 6 or 7, just like that, meeting with a senior stakeholder with a project that had 30, 40, 50 development people working on it in a nice agile way. They're racing ahead. That's absolutely brilliant. Racing ahead, doing lots of work, except they're heading in the wrong direction because they can't get time from their customer. Her name was Jo. We sat down and I said, look, Jo, is there anything that we could do? She said, oh, I'd love to help, but I'm just so busy. She goes, okay. I said, well, could you get half an hour a day? Oh, I could. How would I do that? I suppose. We're a little bit reluctant here. I said, well, why don't you start by just getting half an hour every 3 days, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Book it in the diary, we'll set it up, and we'll just do it as office hours. And we'll make sure that the scrum master of that team and the team themselves know that if they want you, they have to be in that meeting room over there between 10:30 and 11, and you will have time set aside for them. And she said, I could do that, but what if no one turns up? And then she answered her own question. She said, if no one turns up, I can just do email. Couldn't I? No, it just wouldn't be a waste of my time. That should be quite helpful. So she set that up and got them half an hour, 3 times a week. And suddenly the team had all of their questions answered so much more quickly. She could see the value. She set aside the time, and if it actually saved the time because it took away a lot of the problems that were being caused, where she had to fix up stuff that was wrong. It was just a tiny little move, and it was very, very easy for her to do, and it wasn't a big ask, and it paid off quickly. So those 3 things there. So if you think in terms of the focus formula, that's the first C. That's coordination. Just a little bit of coordination. Book into someone's diary, a little bit of extra time, and her capacity went from, say, there up to there really quickly. But it was only, they weren't getting very much time. So an hour and a half extra a week was actually quite a big win for them. And then over time, she just found it a lot easier to give more and more time because she felt like she was part of the team. Right, so come over this one. So that's coordination. This one here, if you've got competence issues, but you someone who's busy, sorry, they're not so busy, but they may be new to the job. So what we do here to make it easier is we do collaboration. Something we can do in all of these things here. So collaboration, and we use it here. Just imagine you have an analyst in your team, and you go, hey, look, guys, the most useful thing we could do is to get better, higher quality input from our customer. Okay, cool, yeah. How could we help the customer? And this is, again, standard coordination, collaboration stuff. Okay, well, why don't we prepare stuff? Don't take problems to them. We'll try and take problems with maybe a few well thought out solutions and options for them, and maybe ask them if they could choose. Maybe we just do more prep stuff. Maybe we actually do stuff that we would prefer that they do, because we can actually do most of that, and we work with them more closely, and we build up that relationship, and we help them. And over time, we increase their competence. And then we move there. You'll find that this is a really surprisingly common scenario, because the customer actually doesn't know what to do. So they actually need someone to guide them and help them and make it easy to do their customer job. And if we do that, it requires far less of their time. And there's this awful thing about making decisions, is that it requires a huge amount of cognitive energy. It burns through calories if you ask people to think too much and untangle messy problems. So if we can do that for them, we can collaborate, we can help them, then we can give them more time back. And you know what? Most of the time, if we try and do this incrementally, we can actually take someone from here, we can coordinate, we can collaborate, and we can move them, both of these up that way and across that way at the same time. And that is effectively that's it. You find the bottleneck, it's customer. You don't try and optimize the time, because they're already trying to do that, and you can't go and optimize their time directly, but you can help them by coordinating things better for them, and actually just getting a little bit of time in their diary. Just ask for a little tiny bit to start with. Don't try and leap from a 3 to a 10, leap from a 3 to a 3.5. And then next week, go from a 3.5 to a 4. And then try and help them by collaborating, because oftentimes your agile team actually has a heck of a lot of the skills that is what the customer does, that what the customers may be missing, or maybe has but can't use because they're so busy. So just supplement it, but leave them in charge of the decision making and just make it easier for them. Right. So that's step 1 or 2 of the plan. And yeah, step 1 is really just learn that focus formula. And I just want to run through this really quickly. So you learn that's not hard. That focus formula, you just, once you find the bottleneck, you don't even need to tell people about bottlenecks, and just say, this is the problem we want to solve. If we get them a bit more engaged, probably run a bit faster, that's good. You have this focus formula in the back of your mind, and you can use it to prompt people. So if you haven't got a copy of my book, just read through that, just see examples. And then you just ask people, what could we do to solve this? And they will quickly dump out ideas. And then you just cherry pick a few that will take you from a 3 to a 3.5, and then a 3.5 to a 4, and then a 4.5 maybe to a 5, and then maybe 5 to a 6. And then you go, hey, maybe that's good enough. And if it's not, you keep doing it. And once you've done those, that's when you need to move to the U-shaped team. And very quickly, the U-shaped team is this shape here, where this is capacity, relative capacity, and this is customer, say analysts, designer, programmers, testers, and then users out here. You actually deliberately want the bottleneck to be strategically placed in one place, and that is right there. The programmers, with the developers. You want people who are upstream, these guys here, to have plenty of capacity so that they can think through stuff and get it right, prevent rework, get rid of all of those problems that we talked about at the beginning that you put in the chat list, so that when the work gets to the developers, we deliver, they build really well thought out solutions. There's nothing that's non-obvious from that, but that's just, we don't normally think of it this way. On this side, we want the testers to be really quick and reactive so they can give fast feedback, so that there's not all delays, so that we can limit WIP, we can get stuff in, out, do really good quality. Over here, you want the users, you want ops to be able to release stuff frequently enough, but not too much. And you want users to be able to absorb the changes that you're pushing onto them. So that's the U shape. And once you've got it there, it's a very fragile thing. So you have to protect it. You have to keep improving it. which means that you have to not just do retrospective improvements, you have to make sure that you don't improve this bottleneck capacity so much that they suddenly turn upside down and become a N-shaped thing. And you have to curate. And that, for me, is where the magic comes from. That's where you look at the work that's coming into the teams and you think about, how can I milk as much value out of this cash cow as I can by looking at what we feed them. And that's it. Let me just check. Yeah, so that's it. I'm conscious that that's actually the hour, and I'm not entirely sure what will happen in a moment with the webinar will kick us out. If it does, you've got all the goodies, and that's it. I'll send out a recording of this, and you'll all be good to go with that. And if it doesn't, I've got time for questions. I think most of you on the thing know that I have a course that teaches this stuff that will be coming out very soon. If you're interested in that, give us a yell. But I just think if you do this, this thing here will solve the elephant in the agile team room in a really easy, simple way that doesn't require big sales pitches, doesn't require escalation to management, doesn't require battles. It just requires, hey, look, customer, hey, look, can we just sit down and figure out how we can help you get a bit more out of this process? Just a little bit by little bit. I think you get a lot out of this, but we just don't, just a few tiny changes. Could we just have a little chat and see how we can work together? And that will build this spiral of trust, and everything will end up wonderful. Wonderful. Right, okay, I'm going to stop there just in case this gets this out.
Just as we wrap up, Clark, look, I would just want to ask one question in the chat, if we've still got a few minutes. What is one highlight you got from this session? And just share one thing you might have learnt from the session today. If we get kicked out, all very well and good, Clark's finished up, but it would be just really great to just kind of get a bit of an overview of what are some of the things you got out of the session. And thanks, Jim, for your thanks. So in the chat, what is one highlight from the session for you? And that'll help us as well, because this is the first time that I've helped Clark with one of his sessions. I've really enjoyed the session, Clark, and I've learned some stuff. I actually have some questions for you around this engaging customers. I do a lot of work internally with organizations in terms of how to engage people inside organizations. And you've just talked about engaging customers, still people. So that's really cool from my perspective. We've got a couple coming through. So more open mind about who the customer could be. Nice. Who else has got a highlight from the session? Just one thing, even if it's little, how to improve on engagement. Nice, thank you.
I particularly like Kevin's point that there can be an optimal place for a bottleneck. It sounds ridiculous, but I've been doing this stuff since the 90s. And I've actually been doing talks about this, this U-shaped team. And then two things occurred to me. One is that the customer actually is almost always the bottleneck, but we don't treat it like that. And that's where you start. And it's actually far easier than I thought. But the other bit is that it's a strategic bottleneck, choosing where to have the bottleneck. On an airport, a busy airport, you would want the runways to be the bottleneck, not the bathrooms in the car park. To be extreme.
Viju says the buffalo story is good. It is good fun and a good fun way to visualize bottlenecks. And Anna's going, curate. That was insightful. Tom, awesome to have a structured approach to identifying and thinking through resolving bottlenecks. Awesome. These are great comments. Great highlight.
Actually, it's really helpful.
Any others before? Any others before we wrap up or get kicked out?
Actually, there's a question there come through as well on the Q&A. I just noticed that.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you everyone for being. I hope the Zoom stuff has worked okay. We normally just have lots of Zoom chats, and the webinar thing is a little bit different. So I'm just glad that we're actually able to see you. Quality double
thanks,
act.
Kevin. Really appreciate that. Thanks, guys. Good stuff. A quality double act. That's good, because this is the first time we've actually had a double act. So thank you very much for the feedback on that. We'll get better at this, I think, Clark.
Yeah, I'm the good, you're the bad, and in a few weeks' time.
So, and our other colleague Graham, who, if you join our seminars over November, you'll meet the ugly. I mean, but don't tell him that.
Yeah, don't tell him that. Yeah, good, bad, the ugly.
Except that this has been recorded. I think I might be in trouble.
I never said ugly. So there's this question. It's a really good one. I'll just answer that. If the customer does not know what they're trying to do, in other words, if you look back here, and they are not competent, I'm not sure if that will have lost the, it's lost the, so on this scale here, if they're down here or down here, they're not competent. Why do we need these internal customers? Because that's a really good question. What you actually need is steerage and decision making. They could be someone inside your team, but they would be forming that role. So that role is typically outside the team, different division, say, in a bank. But we need people who can make sure that we're going in the right direction. And normally that requires a bit of a skill set that most people don't have. Now, those people, if that's their job and their responsibility to provide good steerage and they don't have it, if they're actually way over here, oftentimes, actually, I'm thinking they're mostly typically in here somewhere. We can help them move and get better and better and better, just by helping them, because we've got a lot of those skills in the team. If they're over here, it's quite possible that we might need to do the opposite of upgrade on the focus formula, which is downgrade, and upgrade at the same time, which is known as a replacement. Sometimes you actually need people just aren't up to the job. Most of the times I found that a little bit of help and we can just get them shuffling along this way and make things better. But I suppose if you think of things like skills, like programming as a skill, testing as a skill, analyzing things as a skill, user experience stuff, lots of different skills there. But the key thing that we get from the customer is actually prioritization and decision making from someone who has all of the skills and knowledge to do that. So it's to answer that, so come up as an anonymous attendee, so I'm not sure who said that, but if the customer does not know what we're trying to do, why do we need them? Well, actually, we need much, much, much more of them, the skill that they're not providing is the answer. Okay.
Cool. Well, I've just put a couple of notes in. Thanks all. Really appreciate your highlights. And thanks for joining us today. I've actually had a good time. I've learned some stuff as well. I do have a couple of questions, but that's okay. I will leave that for another session.
Thank you,
I'm
Norway.
sure there will be. Oh, thanks, Tom. Yeah, thanks to New Zealand. Yeah, well, thank you from New Zealand.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, New Zealand, thanks you very much, Tom, and all of Norway, actually. Actually, Tom, sorry, this is going to be recorded and you're probably blushing and rolling your eyes as I say this, but you've made such a difference to my career. So thank you very much.
Nice to be grateful.
Oh, thank you,
Steve. Thanks very much. Thanks for your comments. Yep, and you too, Jonas.
Okay, so I reckon you're welcome, says Tom. Thank you. Excellent. Yep. Okay, lovely. Shall we see if we can now find the end webinar button?
Oh, the end webinar button. Oh.
Thanks a lot.
So as you guys have probably worked out, we are relatively new to this webinar thing, so we're still learning our technology. I suspect if we leave, I think if we just leave the room, we should be all good. This bit, there we go. This bit will be edited out of the Zoom. Out of the
incompetence. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Cheers now.
Cool.